Picture this. You're standing in your kitchen, admiring those perfectly ripe, ruby-red tomatoes you just brought home from the store. Their glossy skin catches the light and you can almost taste their sun-warmed sweetness. But here's a question that might blow your mind. What if I told you that those very tomatoes sitting on your counter could be the foundation of your next thriving garden? While most gardeners swear by starting from seeds, there's an incredible secret hiding in plain sight that could revolutionize your growing game entirely. Today, we're diving deep into one of gardening's best-kept secrets, regrowing tomatoes from store-bought stems. Yes, you heard that right. Those succulent stems that you'd normally toss in the compost bin are actually powerhouses of potential, capable of transforming into vigorous, fruit-bearing plants that could fill your garden with homegrown goodness. This isn't just another gardening myth. It's a legitimate propagation method that's been quietly practiced by savvy gardeners for generations, and it's about to become your new favorite technique. Before we get our hands dirty, let's understand the fascinating biology that makes this possible. Tomato plants possess an extraordinary ability called adventitious root formation, which means they can develop roots from virtually any part of their stem when given the right conditions. This natural superpower is what allows us to take advantage of store-bought tomatoes in ways you never imagined. When you purchase fresh tomatoes with their stems still attached, you're essentially buying a cutting that's already been harvested from a mature plant. These stems contain nodes, small bumps along the stem where leaves once grew, and these nodes are packed with dormant cells just waiting for the right opportunity to burst into life. Unlike many other vegetables that lose their regenerative capacity once harvested, tomato stems can maintain their viability for days, sometimes even weeks, when properly handled. So the key really lies in understanding that the stem is still very much alive when you bring it home. The vascular system that once transported nutrients and water throughout the plant is still intact, and with the right encouragement, it can redirect its energy toward developing new roots and shoots instead of simply withering away. Not all store-bought tomatoes are created equal when it comes to regrowth potential. Your success really hinges on choosing the right candidates, and there are specific characteristics you should look for during your next grocery run. The ideal tomato for this experiment should have a fresh green stem that's at least 3 to 4 inches long. You definitely want to avoid any stems that appear dried, brown, or brittle, as these have likely lost their regenerative capacity. Look for stems that still have some flexibility when gently bent. They should feel firm, but not woody. The attachment point where the stem meets the tomato should be clean and fresh-looking, without any signs of rot or mushiness. And if you can find tomatoes with small leaves still attached to the stem, consider yourself lucky, as these are often the most viable candidates for successful regrowth. Cherry tomatoes and smaller varieties tend to have the highest success rates, partly because their stems are typically harvested more recently and, maintain their vitality longer. However, don't discount larger varieties entirely. I've seen spectacular results from beefsteak tomato stems that looked promising. The variety doesn't matter as much as the freshness and condition of the stem itself. Once you've selected your prime candidates, the preparation process is crucial for maximizing your chances of success. Start by carefully removing the tomato fruit, making a clean cut about half an inch above where the stem emerges from the fruit. This gives you a fresh surface to work with while preserving the maximum amount of viable stem tissue. Next, examine your cutting closely and remove any leaves that would be below the water line if you're planning to start in water, or below the soil line if you're going directly into growing medium. However, leave the top few sets of leaves intact, as these will continue photosynthesis and provide energy for root development. If any leaves appear damaged or wilted, remove them entirely to prevent potential disease issues. So, the bottom of your stem cutting should be trimmed at a 45-degree angle using sharp, clean scissors or pruning shears. This angled cut, increases the surface area available for water uptake and root development. Some gardeners actually swear by making this cut underwater to prevent air bubbles from entering the stem's vascular system, Though honestly, this step, while helpful, isn't absolutely necessary for success. Water propagation is often the most successful and visually rewarding method for beginners. Just fill a clean glass jar or container with room temperature water, making sure it's deep enough to submerge at least 2 inches of the stem. Then, place your prepared cutting in the water, and be sure no leaves are submerged, since this can lead to rot and bacterial growth. Position your container in a location that receives bright indirect light throughout the day. A north-facing window, or a spot that gets morning sun but afternoon shade works beautifully. Direct sunlight can be too intense and may cause the cutting to wilt before roots have a chance to develop. Also, the water should be changed every 2 to 3 days to prevent bacterial buildup and ensure your cutting has access to fresh oxygen. Within 5 to 10 days you should start seeing tiny white root nubs emerging from the nodes along the stem. This is the moment that never fails to fill me with excitement no matter how many times I've witnessed it. These initial roots will quickly develop into a robust root system that can support the cutting's transition to soil. While water propagation offers the satisfaction of watching roots develop, some gardeners prefer planting directly into soil for potentially stronger root development. If you choose this method, use a well-draining potting mix combined with perlite or coarse sand to improve drainage. The soil should be moist but not waterlogged, as overly wet conditions can cause stem rot before roots have a chance to establish. Plant your cutting deep enough so that at least 2 nodes are buried in the soil, as roots can develop from any of these points. Firm the soil gently around the stem to provide support, but don't compress it so much that air circulation is compromised. Creating a mini greenhouse effect by covering the pot with a clear plastic bag or placing it in a humidity dome can significantly improve success rates, especially in dry indoor environments. The soil method often produces plants that transition more easily to outdoor growing conditions, as they're already adapted to drawing nutrients from soil rather than water. However, success rates can be slightly lower than water propagation, particularly for beginners who may struggle with maintaining optimal moisture levels. Temperature consistency is absolutely crucial for successful tomato stem regrowth. You'll want to maintain temperatures between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 18 to 24 degrees Celsius, for optimal results. Fluctuations outside this range can stress the cutting and significantly reduce success rates. If your home tends to be cooler, you might want to consider using a seedling heat mat to provide gentle bottom heat, which can really help accelerate root development. Humidity plays an equally important role in the process. Tomato cuttings thrive in environments with 60 to 70% humidity, which is often higher than typical indoor levels. You can increase humidity by grouping plants together, using a humidifier, or creating mini greenhouse environments around individual cuttings. However, be careful not to create stagnant air conditions, as this can promote fungal problems. Lighting requirements evolve as your cutting develops. At first, bright indirect light is really all you need. But as roots start to establish and you see new growth, your plant will actually benefit from more direct sunlight or even some supplemental grow lights. And if you're using artificial lighting, make sure to position those LED grow lights about 12 to 18 inches above the cutting, and aim to provide about 12 to 14 hours of light each day. Even with perfect conditions, you might run into obstacles that really test your patience and problem-solving skills. Stem rot is probably the most common issue, and it's usually caused by too much moisture or not enough air circulation. If you notice the stem becoming soft, dark, or even mushy, go ahead and remove that affected portion right away with clean scissors, change the water, or adjust your soil moisture, and definitely try to improve ventilation around the cutting. Fungal issues can show up as fuzzy growth on the stem or leaves, and you'll often notice a musty odor along with it. Prevention is always better than treatment, so do your best to maintain good air circulation and avoid crowding your cuttings together. If you do spot fungal problems, remove any affected plant parts immediately, and maybe consider using a dilute solution of baking soda and water as a natural fungicide. Wilting is another pretty common concern, especially during that first week when your cutting is just adjusting to its new environment. You know, some initial wilting is quite normal as the plant redirects its energy toward root development. But hey, if you notice severe or prolonged wilting, it might be a sign of too much direct sunlight, insufficient humidity, or even water stress. Just something to keep an eye on. The journey from a simple cutting to a thriving plant is really a marvel to witness. Understanding the timeline can help you set some realistic expectations. During this first week, it's all about maintaining consistent conditions while your cutting establishes its root system. And don't be discouraged if growth seems a bit slow. Most of the action is happening below the surface where you can't see it. By the second week, you should start noticing visible root development if you're using water propagation. Or, if you've planted directly in soil, look for signs of new growth. The cutting may also begin producing new leaves or shoots, which is a great sign that it's successfully transitioning from survival mode to active growth. Exciting times ahead. So, by week 3, you'll usually start to see some really exciting developments as the root system gets more established and new growth begins to pick up speed. This is often the point when water-propagated cuttings are just about ready to move into soil, while soil-propagated plants might be ready for bigger containers or even for transplanting outdoors, if the weather's, cooperating. Once your regrown tomato plant has built up a strong root system, and you're seeing that vigorous new growth, it's time to start thinking about long-term care, and eventually, harvesting. Go ahead and transplant your water-propagated cuttings into gradually larger containers. This gives the roots plenty of space to develop fully before you make that final move to your garden or a big outdoor pot. The real beauty of this propagation method is not only how cost-effective it is, but, honestly, just how fast you can see results. While tomatoes grown from seed need several weeks just to germinate and get through those early stages, your regrown plants already have a solid head start with established stems and more mature plant traits. These regrown plants will typically produce fruit within 60 to 80 days of successful rooting, depending on the variety and growing conditions. The fruit quality and flavor will be identical to the parent plant, giving you the opportunity to perpetuate especially delicious varieties that you discover at the store. The satisfaction of successfully regrowing tomatoes from store-bought stems goes far beyond the monetary savings, though those certainly add up over time. There's something deeply rewarding about transforming what others might consider waste into a thriving, productive plant that will feed your family for months to come. This method also opens up exciting possibilities for variety experimentation. When you discover an exceptionally flavorful tomato at the farmer's market or specialty grocery store, you can potentially propagate it and add that unique variety to your permanent garden collection. It's like having access to an endless seed catalog right at your fingertips. The speed and reliability of this propagation method make it perfect for filling gaps in your garden, replacing plants lost to weather or pests, or simply expanding your growing capacity without the wait time associated with seed starting. Many gardeners find that once they master this technique, it becomes an integral part of their growing strategy. Armed with this knowledge, you're ready to embark on an exciting journey that will forever change how you view those store-bought tomatoes. Remember that success with any propagation method improves with practice. So don't be discouraged if your first attempts don't yield perfect results. Each cutting teaches you something new about plant biology, growing conditions, and the remarkable resilience of nature. The next time you're at the grocery store, look at those fresh tomatoes with new eyes. See the potential in those green stems, imagine the possibilities, and remember that you now possess the knowledge to turn ordinary shopping trips into extraordinary gardening adventures. If this guide has inspired you to try something new in your garden, I'd love to hear about your experiences. Don't forget to subscribe to Smart Garden for more innovative growing techniques, and share this video with fellow gardeners who might be ready to expand their horizons. Together, we're building a community of growers who see possibility everywhere and aren't afraid to experiment with nature's incredible gifts. Happy growing. And remember, every expert was once a beginner who decided to try something new.